Hello friends, how are you today? I hope you're doing well. I am here to read more from Dark World Light Work, and we are reading chapters 57, 58, and 59, and those are called Some Measure of Grace, Last Mile Home, and Sin County. I am going to read two passages each from Last Mile Home and Sin County because I feel like they are relevant. Alright, so let's get to it. Some Measure of Grace. By some measure of grace, I had the women being housed with me to represent good and light-hearted energy in the face of adversity. Together, we were able to transmute the onslaught of negativity that was constantly being thrown at us. After 4.5 years alone in the car and almost 2 weeks in solitary confinement, it was therapeutic and uplifting to have the opportunity to commune with people in similar, albeit unique situations. Somehow, these women and I were able to enjoy our time together. I got my best legal advice from the ladies who'd spent years in and out of jail or prison. I met a woman named Cassandra. The first time we spoke, she allowed me to speak on my story without judgment. It was the first time I'd been able to do so in 5 long years. That experience was healing in a way I could never have imagined. I am so grateful for her presence during such a difficult time. These women made the days bearable. I look back on my time in OC custody with more fond memories than anything, all thanks to these beautiful ladies. I never got my vegan meal request honored. On the bright side, I was always able to drop off something extra for one of the girls. In jail, even packs of berry-flavored drink mix are near priceless commodity. The food was minimal, but at least Orange County attempted to represent balanced meals to inmates. In a government-run society, animals, the homeless, prisoners, students, and employees are treated similarly. It is important for every citizen to remember this. Standing on its own, I give the OC food program a C grade. Compared to Clark County, it gets an A. The eating schedule in OC was absurd. Breakfast was served as early as 3:30 a.m., lunch at 9:30 a.m., and dinner was served as early as 3 p.m. This meant long hours of forced intermittent fasting. Fasting was something that I'd participated in as part of my fitness journey. I'd also been forced to restrict calories when I didn't have the funds to buy food. This situation was similar in many ways, however, each experience was quite different energetically. Meals weren't the only activity that was disrupted. Sleep was never restful, mostly because of the noise and the fact that the jail lights never turned off all the way. There was always an obnoxious neon bar overhead, 24 hours a day. During sleep hours, it was only dimmed slightly. This was the torture technique that was the most offensive. The most professional CEOs were kind enough to leave the main lights off for the 4 a.m. meal. They would turn them on at a more reasonable 7 a.m. The messier ones would turn the lights on 30 minutes before chow and leave them on for the rest of the day. The same deputies would purposely slam giant metal doors all night long. The nice ones left them open to save time and cut down on noise. The minutiae of this dark place was fascinating to observe and hellish to live through. A few times a week there was something called a clothing exchange. The inmates would trade their soiled clothes and linens for cleaner ones. The more qualified guards would exchange the linens at a reasonable hour. They would start at 7 p.m. and be finished within 60 minutes. The less qualified guards would wait until just before lights out, take over 2 hours, and inevitably leave many inmates missing an item. When the guards acted professionally and followed the rules, the inmates followed suit. Everything ran smoothly. If the guards were playing around, it was a free-for-all and chaos ensued. The ones in charge make things more difficult for everyone by acting petty. Just do your job. If an employee at any other company acted as immature and unprofessionally as lawmen, they would be fired. These types get away with their behavior because it has been normalized and these people live in a bubble. In the justice system, the righteous path has become the road less traveled. Most people in jail are indeed guilty. Many of them carry so much internal guilt overall that they don't stop to itemize their treatment in the way that I have. The system feeds off of the brokenness of the average inmate. These people often have an unhealthy idea of how they deserve to be treated, simply because how they have always been treated. I spoke to a 23-year-old girl who'd been smoking meth since she was 9 years old. She felt like she deserved to be in jail because she was, quote-unquote, a bad girl. When the words left her mouth, she sounded 9 years old. "I'm a bad girl," she cooed. It was haunting. The woman was just owning her reality. The entire time I was in jail, I didn't meet a single person who I felt deserved to be treated like an animal or dehumanized. Even the most violent criminal theoretically deserves forgiveness and understanding. Of course, this is evolved thinking. Now we're going to read from the first passage of The Last Days. The day before Tyrone was set to pick Clem up from the shelter, I decided to fast. My goal was to clear the energy. I sat at a table in the cell reading Psalms as I counted down the hours until her release. I am confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. A mantra. Clementine's release was the true turning point for me. We were headed in a positive direction the entire time. I could see the light in a little way at long last. I breathed a sigh of relief as the clock struck 11 a.m. I wouldn't get out of the cell to make a call until later in the day. The moment I got the chance, I ran to the phones and quickly dialed Tyrone's number. She let me know that Clem was safe with her. She said that my girl lost over a pound and was moving kind of slowly. She also let me know that Clem did in fact have an ear infection. Tyrone made such a fuss about her condition that the shelter ended up waiving the entire adoption fee anyway. Because of politics and red tape, even Clementine suffered needlessly. For 30 days, she was held for ransom in a cage, only to have the matter of finances rendered moot in the end. At this point, I was also malnourished and 19 pounds thinner thanks to the same kind of petty bureaucratic nonsense. For the first few days, I still felt like Clementine was in danger. I kept having to remind myself that she was with a friendly. I was confident she would continue to get better each day out of the cage. I couldn't wait to get out to the phone each morning. I prayed that we would be let out at a reasonable hour so I could check up on Clem. A day or two after her release, I called Tyrone twice and she didn't answer. This sent me into a panic. The energy was manic. I got it into my head that something was wrong. I frantically called my mother to ask if she'd heard from them. This would be the first time we spoke in nearly 5 years. She sounded shocked to hear from me. I said hello, then I immediately asked about Clem. I was hyper-focused. She told me that she just talked to Tyrone about an hour before. She and Clem were out on a walk with her dog. Everyone was perfectly fine. She even told me that Tyrone sent her pictures of Clem lounging on the beach and enjoying the cool evenings in a sweater. This made me laugh out loud. Clem hates sweaters. She's getting used to it, was Tyrone's take on the clothing. I was grateful to hear a positive update. I spoke to my mother briefly and gave her all the information that I knew about what was going on with the case. I still didn't trust her at all, and I didn't want to depend on her, so I put off an actual conversation as long as I possibly could. Okay, and this is passage 2 of A Last Mile Home. The employees of the jail that I encountered were, for the most part, mentally unstable, petty, and immature. I don't condone any activity that negatively impacts the life of another. Both criminals and cops do this for money every day. Being accused of a crime is not a green light to torture, starve, and hold a human being for ransom or prisoner for an extended period of time. The fact that the system is full of unqualified pencil pushers is no excuse. When I signed the paperwork for extradition, the judge said that Nevada should pick me up in 14 days, if they were going to come at all. If Nevada didn't show up after 30 days, Orange County would have to release me. I don't know why they can't just give people a straight answer. I believe it's because they can't keep anything straight themselves. 19 days after the last hearing, an off-duty swine from some state in the Midwest came to pick me up in a Mercedes SUV. At least they knew how to transport me in proper style. It was a Friday. This meant that I would be forced to wait through the weekend before being seen by the judge. This is when I started to take note of just how deep the corruption went in Nevada. I was silent for nearly the entire drive. I answered a few official questions for the escort, and that was it. The only other event of note was a semi-pornographic conversation that the man decided to have with a personal friend of his on the phone. The guy looked like an actual giant hog. Definitely not my type. But that doesn't matter to a pervert. All I could think was how much money and time was being wasted. I sat in the back of the car going over what I'd just been through. No one deserves to be treated so terribly. I do not believe that an organization as morally and literally corrupt as the United States justice system has the right to punish citizens for allegedly committing so-called crimes, particularly when the employees of this system play fast and loose with the rules whenever they see fit. I don't condone lawlessness or crime, but I cannot agree with or support a corrupt institution that claims to represent the law. If a person believes in the system so blindly, I would dare them to go through it as an innocent person. This way they can see for themselves if they are treated as such. I'd love for people who sit comfortably in their homes to spend a night in jail, a county jail, just to see exactly what they're supporting. Keeping in mind that it could happen to anyone. Because I believe in justice, I cannot support the justice system. My experience was not an anomaly. All right, now I'm going to read passage 1 from Sin County. The state of Nevada went out of its way to prolong my unlawful detainer as long as legally possible. Instead of being seen within 72 hours of being booked as protocol, I was informed on the 71st hour that the initial hearing was pushed back 2 weeks. I was not surprised. Big money men paid a lot of people to spin a false narrative around me. You know what they say, right? Make plans and God laughs. The bad guys came to Sin City, took a gamble, and lost. The house of the Lord always wins. Nevada Corrections fails miserably at providing proper nutrition and opportunities to exercise to inmates. The food was slop. They serve no real protein, only soy crumbles. All of the grains are instant mush, from the potatoes to the pasta. Breakfast doesn't change. Every morning it's sugary cereal, sometimes with powdered milk, and a slab of bologna that smells like feet. The portion sizes are offensive. Entire meals didn't equal 2 cups of food. The portion of vegetables was always canned and no more than a tablespoon. The kitchen treated the food food like gruel, haphazardly plopping slop onto thick plastic trays from the 1970s or worse, styrofoam containers. The amount of unnecessary waste accumulated by using styrofoam to feed thousands of prisoners is a crime against the environment and a tremendous waste of money. However, jail employees are lazy. Most don't even want to stand there to supervise as inmates wash trays after each meal. The only upgrade of note at CCDC was the commissary system. I left the Orange County Jail with a $370 balance on my account. This was because I was only able to have my commissary order fulfilled one time in the 6 weeks that I was detained. On the other hand, the system in Nevada was completely automated. The only time the guards interacted with the orders was when they were handing purchased items out twice a week. Even that exercise was a complete shit show thanks to their involvement. My mother eventually spoke to the public defender. I wanted him to ask that they drop the charges. In the end, he came to me with an ultimatum. Either plead something called no contest, or I wait in jail for who knows how long while they decide if they have enough to go on to trial. There was nothing fair or speedy about the offer. I was painted into a corner. I asked the defender if I could be released to await the next move. He claimed that the judge, quote unquote, wasn't into that. So the judge is into letting people sit in jail while they await trial for no good reason. She is into clogging up the system with a case that's clearly and most importantly frivolous. What she's not into is situational awareness or logic. She works for the justice system. Why would she be? I was led to believe that no contest essentially means that you and the DA agree to disagree. The state says you still might be guilty, and you say that you're not. The state's official records claim that I'm guilty. My official records know they can kiss my entire ass. The public defender said that one term of the deal was that the felony charge would be dropped to a misdemeanor. He also assured me that after 1 year, I could petition the court to have the entire matter scrubbed from my record for a fee. He promised that in the meantime, the misdemeanor would not even show up on the background check for most jobs. I wanted the charges dropped and for everyone involved to be fired. Each player should face jail time themselves for racketeering and organized crime. I am disgusted that it is common practice to force people into pleas that they disagree with to avoid facing extended jail time. That is called coercion. Who in their right mind would agree to sit in jail for the foreseeable future to fight something so stupid? The defender told me that I could be in custody until February if I chose to try the case. How is that fair or just? At the end of the day, I couldn't really complain too much because I had no plans to speak on the matter anyway. No contest was as close to no comment as I could get, all things considered. I did feel like I deserved better, and not from man. I don't know. I was expecting God to make some sort of grand gesture to save me or something. I wanted to be vindicated in front of those who sought to take my life. I thought this moment would be it. Once again, my timing was off. The result in front of me did not absolve me or even call to issue the tremendous injustice perpetrated against me. Mostly, I was disappointed that the end of the chapter was so mundane. I wanted for the adversary to cower in shame while the God of heaven and earth avenged me in supernatural fashion. I'm impatient sometimes. I did, however, choose to focus on gratitude. I went out of my way to celebrate the miracles that I could see. My grandmother was still alive. This gave me hope. Clem and I were no longer homeless, and we would be reunited soon. Things were on the upswing. I had to keep that in mind. The most appealing aspect of living with my mother was the fact that I would get to see her 2 dogs, Pebbles and Bam Bam, again. I thought about them all the time over the years. I always joked that if I could be reunited with anyone from my past, it would be those 2 little dogs. I used to ask Clem if she remembered them, and she would look around and wag her tail. I took that as a yes. We would now get to spend the next chapter with our little friends. The goodness of life can always be found. I considered it an incredible gift from the universe that my re-entry into the world would include extended time with 3 adorable little dogs. For me, they are the most suitable companions. All right, I think that's it. Yes, that was chapters 57, 58, and 59. Some Measure of Grace, Last Mile Home, and Sin County. And now we are going to move on to the last 3 chapters. Can you believe it? We're already at the end. I know we only read 2 paragraphs, and that's how we got there so fast, because it is 842 pages long. But that was a lot of fun. Anyway, we're not there yet. So the last 3 chapters are called A Bumbling Bunch of Fools, Afterlife, and Give Thanks.